get a tech issue correctly.
And welcome to the 9th grade four-year meeting. Good morning. I'm Kate Licata and Tanya Bach. We are the 9th grade networking co-chairs. And today our presenters are Lori Keene and Jane Mitchell. And they are going to enlighten us on the academic requirements of your child, understanding ambiance, and a bit about standardized testing. Are we nervous? One other thing is the color run is this Saturday.
It's on the website, but if you have not yet volunteered or registered or donated, please do so. It really needs everyone's help. And also, there are extra freshman t-shirts, 2022 t-shirts.
Great.
Great. In the box at the back. If you guys want an extra one, feel free to take it.
All right, good morning all. Can everyone hear? Great. These are just for the video presentation. So good morning. Nice to see so many people in attendance. Before we get started though, please raise a hand if this is your first child in the high school. I would say pretty much 98%.
Okay.
Excellent. Great. Well, Jane and I, we really want to talk to you all today about what we've been doing with your son and daughters, and also really moving forward to what's in store for next year and moving forward. So far, I'm sure, also for those of you, majority's first child in high school, I want to congratulate you. I know this is not just a year of transition for your child, but it's also a year of transition for you all. I know when I met with all of your students on the first day of school, I went home and told them to give you all a hug. Because I know my oldest niece, she's a freshman in high school too, and I know my sister-in-law was definitely a little tearful sending her off and can't believe that, the next chapter has begun. So what have we been doing as the school counseling department with your child? We met them on day one. Hopefully they all ran home and told you, but probably not. That's typically the norm. Their first day was a half day. So the second half of the school day was really geared towards freshman orientation. So they heard from a lot of key people in the building to help get them adjusted. Then after the big auditorium program, each counselor met with just their caseload in a small group. We know it's a long day. We know the first day is exhausting. But we as a department feel that it's just so important for them to see a face of who their counselor is, who's going to be working with you all for the next 4 years. We talked to them about the supports available at the high school, encouraged them to get involved, which they were hearing about that even since 8th grade, the importance of getting involved. And we also talked to them about tips such as using a planner, how to see us throughout the school day, how to make an appointment, and all of that fun stuff. So right off the bat, we saw them. Then just a short few weeks after that, we met with you all during the 9th grade open house. We met with all the freshman parents prior to open house. And considering the majority of you all are first-time parents, I bet you are all in attendance, which we love. We love to also put a face with our students and our parents as well. I know that was quick too, but we had an opportunity to share about our school counseling program all 4 years. Just to refresh all of you as well, we highlighted our school counseling website. Has anyone been on it?
Yes. No?
No, I think I
it's
saw
got
one
so much
hand.
information on it. Please.
It is awesome.
Yes.
We have detailed steps of what we do with all of your children, broken down by 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. There's so many fabulous resources, financial aid information, scholarships, and also as a department, we know that you all can't get to all of our programs, right? We're all very busy. So all of our school counseling programs, if it's either in the day or the evening, we record those. So it's a really nice opportunity just to kind of see and preview the programs. And we encourage families to also go back and revisit some of the really information-laden information, such as our financial aid night that we host every fall. So please check out the website. It's really, really awesome. So also then as early in the fall, I think October even,
Yep, I think we started in October.
we started meeting with your children in small groups, and we did what's called the Learning Styles Inventory. If anybody in the back can't hear, we definitely don't have teacher voices, so please just put a, hey, I can't hear you, so we could talk a little louder. Right off the bat in October, we did a small group program that's called Learning Styles Inventory. We really wanted to meet with your kids. We introduced them to Naviance, which you'll hear a little bit about today. And we wanted them to start learning about how do they learn best and what type of elements can they control. For example, it gets down to the nitty-gritty. Do they learn best in a warm environment or a cold environment? And we talked to them about things that they could tweak to become better learners, such as they're not going to tell you all to turn up the heat, oil is so expensive, but to know maybe a jacket, a sweatshirt, those types of things, so they could learn, because high school is all about figuring out who they are as a person, what makes them tick, so they could become just better aware of their self and their surroundings. So we got them through Naviance right off the bat. Throughout this program, there was also a reflection worksheet, so they could, oftentimes, kids do a quick survey or something, they don't think about it. We really want students to pause, take some moments, and reflect, because through that process, students are going to learn more about themselves and grow. And then, we also showed the students a really cool feature on Naviance that's called My Resume. You heard me mention right off the bat, we're talking about your students about getting involved. Be it a job, volunteer work, mowing your neighbor's lawn. But think, before you know it, their first year, they're almost a quarter way through high school. Before you know it, they're going to be filling out applications for jobs, for college, that if they start this fantastic feature on Naviance called My Resume, they're going to remember what they did. They're not going to forget about the things, and they hardly use it as a professional resume, but it's just to start keeping track because things start to blend together. Okay, so it's really, really, right off the bat, we start working with your children. And we purposely did the Learning Styles Inventory before we met with your son and daughters for that freshman appointment. You all got that letter sent home about the appointment. While we wanted to do the Learning Styles Inventory prior to meeting them one-on-one. Now, mind you, that was just the one-on-one freshman appointments are just the formal scheduled appointment. Quite often we've seen your son or daughter even before that meeting, but we have programs throughout the year. So in terms of the freshman appointment, that's kind of where we also touched upon the learning styles. And do you want to fill them in, Jane?
So the freshman appointment is pretty much scheduled to last a whole period. Some kids are a little more talkative than others, so we get a little bit of a pulse of whether this is somebody who's raring to go or someone who we need to encourage a little bit more. We're really checking on their transition to high school, and we try and start them just after we have first quarter grades, because that gives us a nice foundation to find out those classes that they're doing well in, those classes that are a little more challenging for them, and whether or not they are seeking help from teachers. One thing that I think we all find with our freshmen is that some of them are a little bit better prepared to be self-advocates. So if we have a freshman appointment with someone who's struggling a little and we talk to them and find out they haven't been to the teacher, then we can kind of explain to them a nice way of going in there, being organized, saying this is what I'm coming for help with, and really saying to them, listen, this is what your teachers are there for. They're there to help you. So we give them a bit of encouragement. It's also for us to get to know your child. We ask them a little bit about their activities. So some kids are finishing freshman hockey. Some kids are finishing the first club meeting that they went to. Some kids are doing things outside of school. You know, you don't always have to do everything inside school. There are lots of activities in this town that are run by the town, the equestrian people, the crew people, all the people who go and serve tea to the residents at Waveney. So it gives us a better view of how your child is reacting to where they are in their life at that point. And for some kids, they had a laundry list of things. So it was an opening for us to say, now how are you managing this? I mean, there are times when I look at what 14-year-olds do and I am blown away. So a piece of it was to encourage those who haven't gotten involved yet and to help those who are very involved manage things. We also talked about goal setting. How many of you have heard of Connections? Most people. So Connections is a program that we run about every two cycles.
yeah.
About every 2 weeks. Students are in a group organized by grade, so all the ninth graders are together in their group, and their advisor is someone who is on the faculty. It wouldn't be one of the counselors because we actually often use those things to go in and do programs. But one of the first things they did in those groups was to set goals for themselves. They were setting an academic goal, they were setting a career goal, and they were setting a personal goal. So we were able to talk to them a little bit about that. And most students don't really know at this point what they want as a career. There were a few who did, but not many. But it was a nice way of talking about setting goals for yourself on a regular basis. And by the way, they will do that every year that they go through the high school. And I think we're coming up to a session where we have them reflect on their progress towards meeting those goals. Finally, and I do hope that you actually got a copy of this, we worked with them on an academic 4-year plan. Does everyone remember getting a copy through the mail? Yes? I know mail's old school, but we sent home a copy to you with a little note saying, we had a great meeting with your son or daughter, and this is their plan. That was a tentative plan. It was not so they would know exactly what class they were going to take as a senior, but it was more to show them the options that are open. It was more to show them that maybe they were really all of a sudden getting interested in science, and they wanted to challenge themselves maybe next year as a sophomore. So we explained to them about how recommendations are done, that there's an appeals process. We have students who are extraordinarily talented in music. They're going to want to play their instrument or sing for all 4 years, but at some point we have to find room for a half a year of what we call a career in tech ed elective. So it was a nice discussion and an introduction to them for that 4-year plan. So we finished up those appointments probably the second week in January. Yeah, I mean, oftentimes, we're actually quite impressed that most kids do come to their assigned appointment. I think especially at the beginning, we had 1 or 2 who were delayed. And of course, kids get sick, so we had to carry them through. But we pretty much finished those. So we went through the end of first semester. Your students all went through their first round of exams. Hopefully it wasn't too bad. Hopefully they learned a little from that. I know in freshman appointments, we told them that, listen, the exam is the exam, but it can only count for 20% of your grade, if that. So it's important to work solidly through the semester. So recently, we saw them again one-on-one, and as Laurie said, that doesn't indicate that was the only time we saw them. We may have seen them in the hallways, we may have asked them to come in, they may have come in of their own accord. We did scheduling for them. Your students came with their PE group, and we saw them individually during the PE class. It was really nice to check in with them to find out how things were going. Most kids had done a very good job in terms of going into our system and picking the courses that they wanted. A typical load would be the 5 core courses: English, social studies, math, world language, and science. But some kids don't necessarily have all of those, but the bulk do. And then usually students take either 2 electives, 1 each semester, or a whole year elective, plus their PE and health. A big piece of this is that we desperately try and look at every child as an individual. We want to balance out what they're doing. We want them to have a passion, if they have, for a certain subject, but we want to make sure that they are appropriately challenged. We don't want students who are in over their head, but we want students who have a passion for something to maybe take that at a higher level. So there's going to be a big variation in terms of how many accelerated or honors classes each child will take. We really do tailor that for the child. So finally, as we're going through the year, I guess the next thing that might be on the horizon for some students is standardized testing. Now, there won't be too many ninth graders who will take a standardized test. There is no standardized state test for ninth graders. Hooray. We used to give them all sorts of tests, I remember. The only tests that might be appropriate for some of your ninth graders are the College Board's subject tests. And before I even talk about that, I want you to know that colleges are now abandoning subject tests. Very few colleges require those subject tests for admission. And that's a good thing, because testing is stressful for everybody. But generally for a freshman, the only people who would be considering taking a subject test would be students who are in honors or AP level courses. For example, if you have a child who's in an honors biology, the course will be finishing toward the end of this year. If the student's performing pretty well, and I always recommend that a student goes and talks to their individual teacher about this, then they could, if they wished, take the subject test in biology. If they're in regular biology, they could certainly try it, but I think generally speaking,
very rare.
yeah, it's rare because I think the honors kids are a little bit better prepared for that. But if your child isn't in that honors biology or isn't taking one of these, please don't panic about this. It's pretty early to be taking subject tests in ninth grade. There's lots of time for them to take these, especially in the junior year. But right now, I'm saying to my juniors, we're talking about subject tests, hey, before you jump into taking these, take a look and see if the colleges you're interested in even require them. Because if they don't, why are you putting yourself through this?
Right. And also keep in mind that the colleges that do require them, literally just a handful, they're only looking at 2 to 3. So even if they're an honors bio, if the teacher and their student feels maybe they're not quite ready, plenty of time to get more under their belt as they progress throughout high school.
Yeah.
Is the subject test different than an AP exam?
Yes.
An AP exam is only if the student is taking the AP course, and those exams are in May. The subject tests are typically those that are either in an AP or an honors. For example, a student in AP US History as a junior, they're going to definitely sit for the AP exam in May, and they may also choose to sit for the subject exam as well.
Subject exams are much shorter. APs are generally 3 hours.
Yeah,
They're
3
a
to 4.
combination of short, multiple choice, and then
Essay,
Yeah,
depending
yeah.
on the subject and what it
yeah.
is. Yeah.
Whereas subject tests are 1 hour, and they're all multiple choice.
Excellent.
Good
excellent.
question, though.
All right, great. And also, so this year, I hope you also heard us, right off the bat, we were seeing if your son or daughter is getting involved. So encourage them as well. And also, if you feel your son or daughter is not doing enough, send them in. We can give them ideas. It's not too late to try new things, for sure. And we wanted them freshman year to try a variety of things. Get them out of their comfort zone to help them learn what they're passionate about. And so right now, with the spattering of things, we want to eventually start to hone in on a few things, because schools or colleges are looking for quality over quantity. They don't want to see they serve soup in the soup kitchen one time. They want to see commitments, dedication. So remember that key word, quality over quantity, okay? And have them see us if you think they're not doing enough. And just as the reverse, if you think they're doing too much, have them come in. We want students to have balance. We want them healthy and happy. And if that balance is not there, both academically and extracurricular activities, they're going to have some struggles along the way. So that balance is key, and we can help them. Also, looking in terms of the balance, Also important to know, as your son and daughter grow throughout high school, the commitments are going to be even greater demands. For example, freshman field hockey is certainly not as demanding as JV and or varsity is. So keep that in mind as well. And there was a hand in the back. Yeah, what is a good balance? That's a difficult question because it's really individual. Every child is different. Mrs. Mitchell and I could have the same exact course load. But you know what? That math takes me 2 hours a night to get done. Mrs.
Probably
Mitchell,
it would take Mrs. Mitchell 2 hours to get done.
maybe we could change that. Yeah, 20 minutes. So do you see how there's no one set answer? In terms of after-school activities, should they be doing something at least once a season or through the 3 trimesters? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe the fall, it's the play. Or maybe the fall, it's a sport. Or maybe in the fall, it's walking across the street to Waveney to serve tea, to serve dinner. Maybe winter, you know what? I don't like being cold outside. I don't like running indoors. They take that season off and do some volunteering. So there's not a set, just as if they're not looking for a set number of APs. And remember, getting into college, it's an art. It's not a science. There's not a strict formula. They read holistically. They read per child, etc. So I hope that helps answer your question.
I would also probably say, we want children to have sleep. I do not want to open up the whole issue of sleep here, but we want children to be rested. So, if you're looking at someone who is going from finishing classes to playing a sport, then going on to do something else, because we know that there are other things they can do, and they're finally sitting down to do their homework at 8 o'clock at night, and the homework is probably 2.5 hours plus and can be more if your child is in those accelerated classes, then I think a balance needs to be made. So I think that's where it's an individual decision, and you have to come to grips with that with your child. And maybe sometimes you have to say something like, it seems like you're a little overextended. Is there something that maybe you could take off your plate?
And with that too, when we sat down for course scheduling, just because your son and daughter may have been recommended for the highest level across the board, does not mean that's what they should take. Because they could be up all hours of the night doing work, and that's not the ticket to getting into college. As I hope you hear, there is no specific ticket. Schools would rather have a balanced course load with a few honors APs and have students involved outside of school and have them rested, healthy, and happy. So that's really important to know, because teachers make their recommendations in solidarity. We're not that team environment that SACs have. So the teacher's making just the math rec, along with the science that they know, because they need a certain math and science. But they don't know the 4 other academics. They also don't know the outside extracurricular activities. Maybe son and daughter has to rush home right away and take care of their sister or brother. We have to take everything into account.
Or they
when creating
have,
that balance.
I think your children are a little bit young for this, but we have children who go and work at the Y in the daycare program after school. They have little part-time jobs, which, again, colleges love, and some kids really enjoy that. For some kids, that becomes their allowance money, as it were. But there are some kids who work virtually as soon as they get working papers all the way through. I don't know what Zumbaks would do without some of our children.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking about working papers, we do have some handouts for the end of the program, and one of them is Connecticut working laws for high school students, just because there's a lot of information, so we have that as a handout for you all.
Okay. So in sophomore year, we do start thinking about the post-high school planning process. And I think both of us have recently taught one of our sophomore programs, which I'll come into in a minute. So if we're doing this sort of on a calendar basis, the first thing that comes up from sophomore year is the PSAT. Now, I want you all to take a big, deep breath with this, because the PSAT is a practice test. So really, for juniors, it's a practice for their SAT. So they take the test, scores don't go anywhere. Well, they come to us and they come to the student and obviously to you, but they don't get sent to colleges. Some schools also offer the PSAT for sophomores. We are one of those schools. By no means does the whole sophomore class take this test. I would say maybe a third,
If that, yep.
possibly a third. This is a personal decision that you're going to make with your child. If your child is someone who gets a little nervous with testing, wait until junior year. Or if you have a child who really doesn't mind testing and wants to do this, go ahead and do it. But there will be information coming both on our website, through the announcements. We have lots of ways of getting this out.
Guidance update.
Yep, the school update that's on the announcements page. So the PSAT will be in October, and I think the date actually is
October 9th.
October 9th, okay. Junior year is when we definitely want students to take the test. So even if they took it in sophomore year, we want them to take it again in junior year. Okay, no prep. Read my lips. No prep. You will find that some of these companies will say things like, but we offer this great 3-week test. This is, when you're taking a practice test, that's what it's there for. It's to give you your baseline, so no prep. So that occurs in the fall. In the spring, we do what we call our spring sophomore program, and we take the students out of a health class and a history class, and they don't miss class. The teachers are graciously allow us to have them for a class. And what we're doing at the moment is the first group of sessions, which is where we're giving them a teen version of the Myers-Briggs personality inventory. And we're focusing on them knowing themselves as a person, what their strengths are, what their blind spots are, the kind of person they are. From there, we look at potential careers, and from the potential careers, we look at what training do you need? And that ultimately, for most students, goes into a college search. So in our second session, we're having them research a career, and our Navient system is amazing. One of the nicest parts of this is we have the students fill out a sheet on a career, and there are various things they put. What are the tasks of the job? What's the training needed for the job? What are the wages for the job? And that really starts them going, look how much you would earn in Nebraska if you were this. Look how much you would earn in New York if you were like this. And some students actually have this great desire that they've always wanted to be whatever the occupation is. And when they look at the tasks and the duties, they go, oh no, that's not for me. So that's a really nice thing that we offer.
That's the spring of sophomore year?
That's in the spring of sophomore year. We're doing it right now. Okay. 2 sessions. So it takes us probably about a month to go through.
It's a really fun program.
It really
The
is.
kids love it. They're attentive because it's so exciting because it's all about them. It's learning about themselves. It's an assessment. There's nothing competitive about it. And it really opens up a lot of dialogue. And we encourage them to share the results with you all. We encourage them to make follow-up appointments with us if they have any questions. So it's a really nice opportunity to share this wonderful program with them.
And they can go into their Navients. They can share with you. You can take a look at what the results of this personality inventory were. You can see what that leads into terms of college and career satisfiers, and you can look at the related careers that are there. So it is a very nice piece. Just a word about Navients. Navients changed this past summer into Navient Student. For those of you who have older children, the site has been revised. We used to have a wonderful guest account where you could see a few bits of the site that seemed to be appropriate. We don't have that anymore. They don't have those. So in order to go into Navients, You have to go in with your child, which we actually think is probably a better way of doing it anyway, because it should be together that you do this. Yeah, good, a partnership, yeah. So just so that you know that. So those of you who were able to go in under our Rams fans, unfortunately, you can't do that anymore. So do you want to talk about programs?
Also next year, we know lots of questions come up about standardized testing. So sophomore year, usually in February, we host a session in the daytime. It is filmed about how to create a testing plan. We have usually Charlie from the Summit Group come in. He really lays out tips, strategies, and also he puts a nice spin on de-stressing the process, because it's just a test, as he always ends the program with. And also, please keep in mind, there's hundreds of colleges and universities that are test optional, which means they don't even use them in admissions if you choose not to send them, because college admissions officers know it's the transcripts that is number one, and we're not all strong test takers. That's not necessarily a strong snapshot of your son and daughter. And that list literally grows every year.
Oh, yeah.
So keep that in mind. A transcript is number one. If your student is not a strong test taker, we'll be looking at beyond handfuls of score optional colleges to be applying for. Also, then moving on from February into the spring, we have a sophomore parent program, which is filmed. That's during the day. I think ours is next week.
Is it really?
I think it's next
wow.
week, yeah, for the sophomore parents, which is another exciting time that we all can gather together as a group. You'll hear what we've done with your son and daughter during the sophomore year. We talk about, yet again, we talk about standardized testing. We get you to start to think about the college search. Next year this time, we talk about doing what's called a defining visit. Let's say you're vacationing up in Newport. Well, next year we'll talk about doing little drive-throughs. Go see URI. Go see Salve Regina. On the way up, swing through Connecticut College.
Go see Brown.
Just very different schools, and as a sophomore going into junior year, it doesn't matter about the caliber of the school, the stats, it's just to start thinking small, large, urban, rural, just to get that taste. And at that point, some students are not ready. That's absolutely okay. Some of y'all may have been talking about this forever. Developmentally, this conversation does not need to be happening right now, but some students next year are ready for those visits, and that's okay. I heard it, excuse me.
Do we sign up for like an official visit, or do you like walk around?
Usually just walk around and go get lunch, also because colleges are not even tracking expression of interest at that young. They're really focusing on the juniors and the rising seniors. And really, it's just getting their feet wet is really how we want to look at that, okay? And it also serves as a good motivator for some kids.
Yes, it does. I mean, I think there are some kids who think, oh, college is a long way off. And then they suddenly realize, well, in fact, the group I had this morning, I said, you're almost halfway through high school. And you could tell a few of them went.
Absolutely. And we also talk about what's up and coming. Once again, I'm back on the sophomore parent program that we do this time next year. We also really outline what's up and coming for 11th grade. And we also talk a bit about, in some detail, about the 12th grade. So I hope one of the messages that you're hearing today is that every year there's programs for you all, that you're not navigating any of this process by yourself, that we're here literally for every step of the way. Also in terms, once again, when we met with the students, with the sophomores, we also remind them about the resume feature, so they could remember to use that feature and keep track of their activities. Now, moving into the summer, so we're, before sophomore year, it's important at this time that they're starting to think to be a little bit more active than they may have in the past. Middle school, if they decide to sit by Waveney Pool,
That's pretty okay. Yeah.
Right now, though, now that they're high school students, we want them a little active. And that's a variety for there's not just one thing to do over the summer. A lot of kids, oh no, I've never worked. Have you ever babysat? Yes. That's work. My goodness, if anything, that's a very important job. So they may want to get into babysitting. Maybe they've been a camper, now it's time to see maybe a little CIT, a counselor in training. Lots of students do sports camps, yard jobs, rest, relaxation, but we want them to be doing something than just sitting by the pool. Even volunteering, a lot of students will like to get involved and volunteer during the summer.
Now, at this point, I don't know whether you're hearing this, but the colleges now are, pretty much every college is offering these fabulous college programs for students. I actually read, it was quite depressing for me, I read the back of the New York Times the other day, and the New York Times is offering these summers in New York. They're, I'm sure, very expensive, even for middle school people. So I want you to understand that if you have a child who is really interested and passionate about learning something that maybe isn't offered here at the high school and really is gung-ho about this, and there is a summer program, that's fine. But don't feel that you have to send your child to a college program over the summer. These programs are money makers for the college. Most of the time they ship in instructors. They're not necessarily faculty members. And being able to write that on the application isn't going to give them that extra little bit that, oh, now NYU will look more kindly at me. Or, you know, now I can look at Rice in Texas and they'll know that I'm interested. So I'm not saying that your child shouldn't take those programs, because for some students, that really is, they really enjoy them, they're passionate about the subject, wonderful. But I worry, I mean, I don't know about you, Lori, I've had, my inbox is cluttered every day with more and more colleges saying, we've got all these programs.
It's excellent revenue for the college. just
It's
like we
phenomenal.
said. But also, when a student talks to me about their summer program, if they're going to do a program on a college campus, I'll ask them, oh, tell me why.
Yeah.
When they say, because I want to go to that school, then you know that's the wrong answer. If they do it because they're passionate about it, oh my goodness, this creative writing, and I want to do
Yeah.
this, and at Sarah Lawrence, and this is wonderful, and I'm part of the creative writing club.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense, and that's beautiful. If the first response is because I want to go to college there, save your money, have them work in town, have them babysit.
Yep.
Fabulous, fabulous experience. That looks wonderful on the application.
Yeah. I think especially, you know, for this year, for freshman year, this is really the time to, again, explore various opportunities. Maybe when they get to the junior summer is maybe a time when they are interested in doing something. I've talked to my juniors, and I've said, I had somebody who said, oh, I'm interested in being a, and I said, well, I bet there are people in New Canaan who do that as a job. Why don't you call them in and see if you could job shadow? But by the junior year, they're more ready for that. And that would only be a small piece of their summer. There's a piece of me also that says that I do want kids to get off the treadmill for the summer. Do
Rest.
something a little different. I call it smelling the roses. I just think it's important to have that time so that when they come back in September, they're ready.
They're recharged, have
Yeah.
them rest and relax. You know, not a PSAT course, no.
No.
But encourage them to read. That's wonderful. And if they're
Oh,
not
yeah.
readers, maybe even start off with a magazine that's of interest, just to have them be reading something. That's really, it would be wonderful if you all could encourage that as well.
College Board has often said that some of the best prep for the English part of the SAT is just to read. And, you know, op-ed articles or just books of interest to them. They don't have to be the classics.
No.
You know, you don't have to read A Tale of Two Cities. But decent, not chick lit.
Great, great. So let's see, just to be, you know, mindful of time. You
Yes.
know, at this point, anything from this year, next year, any questions that we could help you with that we didn't explain? Yes. Yes, yep, they
have access to sort of,
Yep.
I need to know, and just on the computer.
absolutely, yep. Anywhere where there's internet and a computer, they'll have access, absolutely.
Okay, these tests, I'm very confused on the subject test and the AP test. As a ninth grader, should you be taking, is this, you take a test, the AP test now to get into an AP class?
No.
No. Really, as a freshman, the only subject exam that a student would be taking right now, traditionally, is the bio, if they're an honors bio, okay? Freshmen will not be sitting for any national AP exam test date this May, because there's no AP courses for freshmen, except for AP World History, which is a 2-year sequence. So if your son and daughter is in AP World History 1 this year, they're going to be in AP World History 2 next year as a sophomore. It's at the sophomore years when they're going to sit for the AP World,
For all these AP?
for the AP exam in World History.
I mean, there's a piece of me that says, if your child is going to sit for an AP test, honestly, I don't necessarily think they need to take the subject test.
No.
Because they're taking an AP test, and that's a little more thorough, a little more detailed than the subject test. Okay? I think years ago, when a number of colleges said, we want 3 of these subject tests, then people started earlier because they said, well, let me try them, let me take as many as I can, and then I'll just take the best 2 or 3. But honestly, I think there's less than 10 now that require them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's about 5, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure the College Board is already planning that they're going to put in a different test now because they're going to lose revenue from,
Yeah.
the fact that less people are taking them.
The other question is the PFA counts for nothing next October, but when does it, I know that something happens, like a National Honor Society. When
Junior
they take
year.
that, if you score high on that, you're a National Honor Society.
National merit.
National merit. Okay.
And that has to be from your junior year score.
Okay. And then what is the Honor Society? Nothing?
The Honor Society, we have a chapter of the National Honor Society. Each high school that has one of these has different entrance requirements. Our initial entrance requirement is a weighted grade point average of 92 or better. But that is at the end of the sophomore year. We don't induct students into the Honor Society until their junior year. If they meet or exceed that weighted GPA, then the advisor sends out quite a detailed form that they have to fill out with a couple of essays that they write. And then there's a committee of faculty who reviews that. So the first opportunity your children would get to be inducted in that is the spring of their junior year. If we have a student who doesn't quite meet those qualifications but meets them by the end of the junior year, we induct a much smaller group in the fall of senior year. But I also want to make a plea here. Of course, it's very nice for your child to put that they're in the National Honor Society on their college application. But schools vary in their requirements. Some schools will have an honor society of 5 students. Other schools will have virtually all of their class in it.
You started out saying that you had to do a test for their learning styles. What are the results of this?
The question was, where are the results for the learning styles inventory? Students can view the results from the learning styles right on Naviance. Just click on assessments and what they've taken, and it's a really beautiful, detailed report. And all of the assessments that they take throughout high school on Naviance, just as Jane said, it's completely confidential. It's only available to be viewed by the counselors, the student, and the parents if they choose to share their passcode with them. And they're accessible all 4 years. Sometimes I'll have a student who's struggling as an upperclassman academically. We'll encourage them to go back and revisit that freshman styles learning inventory so they could do a little soul searching about how could I better improve as well. So they're available all 4 years to see these assessments and use them as a tool.
The only way that we can access that is our children give us their passcode.
Correct.
mean, the best, obviously, I think the most optimum way of using Naviance is to do it together. So that, especially when you get to the college piece, it's very helpful, I think.
Colleges see PFA scores at all, or are those just for your own personal use?
Colleges will never see them. Nope.
Do colleges only see what you send them, or do they have for every essay you take it? And then if you take the subject test and bomb it, do they have access to that?
Every college is different. Usually, the majority of colleges will say send me your best testings. Some colleges will request to see all scores. We don't really want to get hung up on that because the rule of thumb is, on average, students will take 2 exams, 2 SATs, 2 ACTs, sometimes 3. Because research shows scores go up from the first SAT to the second, and from the second a little bit to the third. After that, no, research shows your scores are not going to improve. And if you get too caught up in the standardized process, you're taking millions of tests, all these courses, you're doing this, ultimately what's going to hurt in your child? Too much focusing on standardized testing is going to take away from the academics, and it's the transcript that's number one. Okay? And also some schools, if they request to see all the scores, usually what they're seeing is just the highest depending on the score. The majority of colleges will super score the SAT, which means they're going to take the highest setting for the critical reading and the math, and that's your super score. That's the combined. Usually that's the score that comes out on the reader card, or however colleges call it. It's different per school. Now, the majority of schools super score the SAT. The majorities of schools do not super score the ACT. Okay, hopefully that's was a broad kind of.
And you don't, even if they don't super score, you don't have to worry. Colleges,
they're human.
with the large pools of applicants they have now, they don't have the time to be looking at all those individual scores. Either the first reader or someone in their office will circle the best scores.
Yeah, and if they request to see all scores and one of the sitting test dates are atrocious, that's okay. Remember, college admissions officers, they're human. Your son and daughter could have been sick, had an injury, was not their best, just broke up with a significant other. Yeah. They know that's not a true reflection on them. They know they all have taken the exams, and they look for reasons to accept students.
Yes, they do.
Not to reject. I saw a couple more hands on this side. Some of the handouts that we have for you, we have objectives broken down by each school year, and on the bottom it has the college roadmap. So we have a bunch of copies there for everyone we'll put on the desk. Also, I didn't make as many copies. We also have credits needed for graduation. Could be all found online. Usually your kids graduate with more than the required credit, so if you have any specific questions, you could grab this. It could also be found on the website, though. And also, we keep track of all this, and if anything, credit-wise, is not going well for your son and daughter, we're talking about it.
We're in touch.
You're not going to be unknown or unaware that something is not going correctly in terms of
and
graduation.
the good news for you guys is that our incoming class is going to require more credits than your class. It's the way of the world here.
Yes, question.
I understand that there's no scheduled meeting between council and the parent. We are excluded from whatever the first meeting. When we're going to have like we can officially, schedule to meet our council. Is that going to be a 4-year now for the
Yeah, well, as every child is different. Sometimes we don't have a parent meeting until junior year when we sit down to have that junior appointment where we talk about post-high school planning individually as a family. Other times, there needs to be some parent meetings with the child or without the child. There's been some concerns that we need to get together, we need to talk about it. Sometimes we don't physically meet with the parents until junior year for that junior appointment, but we've had phone conversations, we've had emails. It's really per student. Yeah, give your counselor a call or an email.
If you ever need
We're here.
us, we're here. We read our emails. We'd like your children to read their school emails.
Please encourage them.
You could do us such a good service by saying to them every day, did you read your school email? But we read our emails, and of course we have phone access as well.
And also, Mrs. Pocha, our assistant, is fabulous. Your son and daughter comes down to make an appointment with us. She'll then add that to their Google Calendar, so they'll get an email to hit accept. Then they'll get a reminder. It's just a fabulous organizational tool, but encourage them. Email.
You know, if you need us urgently, we're not going to tell you that we're accessible every minute of the day. So if there is an emergency, call Mrs. Posha and say, I really need to speak to Mrs. Mitchell before she leaves for the day.
No emergency.
Yeah.
Just a regular basis.
No. But I do want to tell you that because sometimes there are certain little emergencies that come up, and we want to be responsive to you. But some days, like for example, Lori and I are not in our offices right now. So if someone from another grade really needed us and we walked back, Mrs. Posha actually isn't in today, but one of our other secretaries would say, hey, Jane, could you please get a hold of so-and-so?
Give a
There's an
call,
emergency. Yeah.
Anything else, folks? Great. Well, we look forward to working with you all for
Yeah.
the next 3 years. The handouts will be right over by the coffee. Sure. Hello, how are you? Nice to see you.